the story that I had that I carried with me is I'm the worst girl ever who allowed this. Because I had that dissonance between who I was and the roles that society was asking me to portray and the behaviors that I was supposed to be acting, the way I was supposed to be dressing. And I really did my darndest. I tried every single time to meet those expectations. And I felt like even when I technically did, I felt like a failure. Because I was like, it was this huge masquerade of, okay, what would a woman do in the situation? Because I don't know, because I'm not a woman.
Hello and welcome to the 50 Shades of Gender podcast. We get curious about all things gender, sex and sexuality, as well as relationships, feminism, the inclusive kind, mental health and kink, and all that makes us humans unique and diverse. From body positivity to body dysmorphia, it's all welcome here. If you like what we do and want to make a contribution, you can become a patron on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/50 Shades of Gender or buy us a coffee. Links are on the website. Now join us on a journey of inclusion, acceptance and respect. I'm your host, Esther Lemons. I am a cis queer woman and my pronouns are she and her. In this episode, I have a conversation with Emme Porter DeWITT, an author, advocate and authenticity coach. Emme's pronouns are they, them, theirs. They are agender and also identify as transgender, non-binary, queer and demisexual. Find out what that means to Emme in this episode. We also talk about how we all have our own unique flavour of humanity, making sense of attractions, the importance of emotional connection, building your own blueprint for relationships, the possibilities in the term queer, being a solo advocate, how parents can build a healthy relationship with their gender-expansive kids, and getting rid of the boxes altogether. It was recorded on the 28th of August 2021. Now let's get into the episode. Hello and welcome. What's your name?
My name is Emme Porter DeWitt, and my pronouns are they, them.
Welcome, Em. And tell me about your gender experience.
Where
to start?
The longest of all long stories, right? I currently identify as transgender, non-binary, and kind of the pinnacle word for me is agender. But many people don't know what that is. So I start with we work them down from the umbrella, transgender, non-binary, and then we get to agender. I have felt as my gender as long as I can remember, but the words were just unavailable to me until 5 to 7 years ago, I want to say. So I did cycle through a couple different words and landed where we are now, and that feels pretty good. So the words are more for other people, I have felt over time. So especially the ones that I cycled through were more, okay, what is the word that I can give to somebody? And that's their shortcut with how to see me, how to treat me, what they can expect, kind of a thing. And now I've gotten to a point where I'm just Em. And as you get to know me, then you'll figure out all of those things of, how to treat me or what to expect. And even then, it's probably a bit of a crapshoot. So, yeah. Some words I've used in the past were androgynous. Androgynous came before non-binary, because non-binary didn't really come into the spotlight until maybe around 2015-ish. This is when I first started to see it. So before then, I was quote unquote not like the other girls, which is just a terrible place to sit in. But I feel like many of us have been there. And so for a while, I used androgynous, especially on dating apps, where I'd be like, just so you know, not to expect like a super girly girl or like some super effeminate person. Maybe I'll use that one. But even that was not quite, it wasn't helpful. So I moved on to other words. And transmasculine was more, people had reflected back to me that I seemed transmasculine to them because my clothing choices and some of my behavior to them was coded a bit more masculine from their experience. So I took that on for a little bit, but got into a point where then I got pushed too far into the masculine box. And I was like,
Oh.
no,
Ah.
no, just as much as
Yeah.
the feminine box. So and that's kind of what the renaissance of agender kind of came to me, where I'm like, oh, there's nothing happening in here. There's just M. I don't
Mm.
have masculine, I don't have feminine. And if I do, it's because culture is assigning that to me, not that
Mm-hmm.
anything inherently within me is masculine or feminine. So it's just like it's
Mm.
different systems, like, oh, black, white, masculine, feminine, active, passive, all of those sorts of binary poles. I'm like, no.
I opt out.
I,
Yeah.
I consciously consciously object to gender. Like, think that
Yeah.
phrase always makes me laugh. So that's
I
kind
can
of
just,
that's
yeah. I can just see some like in in a cheesy movie or series, like someone in a courtroom, standing up saying, "I object." Yeah.
honestly, yeah, that's kind of where I feel about it. It's like, oh, this whole
Yeah.
thing again. Are we still doing gender? I'm really. Could we not? Could we take a break? Like, that's
Yeah.
kind of how I feel sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of where I've landed. Most of the time, I don't like when I'm meeting people. I'm just, hi, my name is Em. My pronouns are they them. Like
Mm.
that's all they really get from me until we have a further conversation, and most times we don't.
Mm.
And so then again, those
That's
words,
it. Yeah.
why?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, when you were just saying that, what came to me, a question came to me actually, and it's like, how could we, as a society, or even just smaller groups of people, how could we not do gender? How do you envision a society that doesn't do gender? How would that look?
Well, I live that every day, so I can tell you it's possible.
Mm.
There's no when I'm meeting people, I'm meeting them as a person,
Mm-hmm.
and that person is their own unique combination of personality traits, of experiences, preferences, expectations, like all of those things. Everyone has their own unique flavor.
Mm.
And yeah, sometimes you can be like, okay, you can vaguely put these folks into a box because they like she, her pronouns, and these folks are more into the he, him. And but I automatically, I can default to they, them for anybody at like and stab of a finger, because to me that's
Mm.
where we are all starting. So I just don't go further into the categorization. Everyone just starts as person. They start as human. And
Mm-hmm.
so there is no gender. My expectations for everybody, regardless of gender identity, gender expression, is are you kind? Are you considerate? Are you loving? All of these very basic human traits. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm basing my
Mm-hmm.
experience off of, and then of course being respectful of how they want to be seen. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the only time that I really engage with gender, is how to, like, I'm not going to refer to you as they them pronouns only if you say my pronouns are she, her. I will respect that, and I will call you, she, her. If ladies feels good, or because some people also have their own unique combination of words they don't like
Mm.
many of my friends use she, her pronouns. If you call them ma'am, oh my goodness. You started a riot. They were like, oh, ma'am, who is the ma'am over here? Like, they absolutely like do not align with that word.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you learn that, and then you respect that, and you move
Mm.
on with your day. Like, it's I don't know, maybe for me it's so easy because that's exactly how I'm walking the world. So I'm like, why is everyone else making this so
Such a big deal. Yeah.
difficult? It
Yeah.
is like, it's such as, like, oh, your pronouns are so hard. It's such a burden on me. I'm like,
Really.
okay, all right. I don't know. I don't know what to do for you about that, but I feel like it can be easy. You
Mhm.
can allow it to be easy. I think we're, as a
Mhm.
society, really stuck in it and really wanting to stay rigid, and that's what's making it hard. I don't
Mm.
think the actual act or behavior is hard. I think we're making it hard.
Yeah, and in the end, it's just another thing to remember about someone, like their name. You can remember someone's name for the most part. Or at least people you see regularly. So I
Hmm.
guess pronouns is just another thing to remember about them, which is yeah. So how have you experienced? You say you've always known you were the gender you are.
Hmm.
How did that show up for you? I mean, Yeah, because some people maybe get an idea of like, oh, I'm different than other people, at
Hmm.
some point in their lives. So how was that for you growing up and stuff?
Kind of the theme that carried through my childhood. I think when I first realized, first of all, I like so close with my brother, Tristan. He's 2 years older than me. And
Mm.
so when we were really young, I was his shadow. Anything that he was doing, I wanted to do. He was playing soccer, I want to play soccer. I didn't like soccer, didn't matter. Tristan was playing soccer, I needed to play soccer. Tristan knows how to read, then I'm going to know how to read. Tristan's potty trained, I'm going to be potty trained. Like it was, so
Mm.
I was following him. And at a certain point, I really understood that we were being treated differently outside of the home. Like
Mm.
inside the home, it was just, mind your manners, do what the parents say. Like there's those
Yeah.
rules were the same. But the societal rules started to really shift, or like as soon as I got into school, I was really understanding. Like, oh, wait a second, like something is different, and I don't get why we're being treated
Mm.
differently, but there is a difference.
Yeah.
And that might have been like point A, and then all the way to point B until my like social transition much later in my early to mid 20s was the story that I had that I carried with me is I'm the worst girl ever who allowed this,
Mm.
because I had that dissonance between who I was and the roles that society was asking me to portray, and the behaviors that I was supposed to be acting, the way I was supposed to be dressing. And I
Mm.
really did my darndest. I tried every single time to meet those expectations. And I felt like even when I technically did, I felt like a failure,
Mm.
because I was like, it was this huge masquerade of, okay, what would a woman do in this situation? Because I don't know, because I'm not a woman. So
Mm.
like that innate knowing, I never had that. I never had that connection. So for me, there was a lot of disconnect with gender until until I found the word non-binary. And then when I read the definition, I'm like, oh my God, that's been an option this whole time. Like that's like it's literally, because I didn't know. I thought it was just like, okay, you've been given these words and like this expectation and this role, and you need to fill it. And even if I mean, it's the same as when, or feels as similar to me as when kids want to grow up to be an artist, and their parents are like, your options are doctor, engineer, or lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many options of vocation beyond, doctor, lawyer, engineer. And so
Mm.
that kind of felt like that with gender. I'm like, well, it was definitely not a boy or a man. That was clear, because I was told that was clear. And then eventually I'm like, yeah, no, I agree. That's also not true. But then
Mm.
I was kept being told, you're a woman, you're a woman, you're a girl. And I'm like, I don't think so. I don't like I'm not sure that's true, but I didn't know that there was any other option. And so once that option opened up, it was like immediately I'm like, cool, what do I need to do? This is what, like everything just became clear. I'm like, yeah, that's what I am. That's what I've been this whole time.
Mm-hmm.
I just, again, I attributed my gender dysphoria to just being a shitty girl, or a girl with very low value. It wasn't, like, because again, it was just like, wow, if this is what I am and I'm not scoring very high, that means that I'm a bad version of this.
Mm.
Not that, hey, you have a different scoring system. This is actually, you're on the wrong rubric.
Mm.
There's like
Yeah.
that. And I'm always curious if I had found that word, of if I had found non-binary, because non-binary was kind of like a gateway word that unlocked all of the other ones.
Mm.
Like if I had found non-binary earlier, or if I had seen the possibility of non-binary in adults or in media or in people around me as a
Mm.
child, would I, like, and just how would I have been? How would
Mm.
my life be totally different? I can't even conceptualize the kids who are coming out today, because they have those role models and they have those words and they have parents who listen to them and
Mm.
respect what they're saying. Like, I don't feel right, like what's going on. I'm in awe of them, and I love them to pieces, because I'm just like, yes, that means you can have your life. You're not
Mm.
like giving up, you're not sacrificing your life for trying to fit into these roles. You
Mm.
can just be yourself this whole time.
Mm.
Like that. So that's where it's felt for me. I think for me, I've just, again, I've never had any gender in me. I scoured every corner for it, and
So you've definitely looked everywhere.
it
Yeah.
just never happened. I tried on various personas within the whole, and it was all of them were wrong. All of them were masks. All of them were dress up clothes that were too big or ill fitting, the wrong color, the wrong cut, everything. Like everything was it's
Mm.
not right. So.
Mm. Yeah. Wow. You also gave me a label, which is demisexual. And what does that mean to
hmm
you?
Yeah, that's kind of a newer one.
Oh.
So the interesting thing about me is that my parents tried to get me to come out with my sexual identity because that's what they pegged my gender nonconformity on.
Mm.
And I told them several times no, or hang on, I have to figure something out first before I can give you a word.
Mm.
Because for me, I knew it was gender for like I couldn't pick a word when I was a teenager. I defaulted to straight because again, everyone else informed me that I was straight. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I
Yeah.
guess that's what's happening here. And I did have an attraction to men, so I'm like, okay, well, I guess that checks out. So I don't have any reason
Mm.
to go beyond that. And I didn't know as firmly as some of my friends who were like, I'm gay, I'm lesbian, like I didn't have
Mm.
that. So I'm like, oh well, if I'm not sure, then I guess straight is fine. But for the longest time, when I started to realize that I had attraction beyond men, but very sporadically, and it would take a very specific person, but like I would be open to it, but I'm like, I'm not really sure what this is. But in the beginning, I'm like, okay, so we're not straight and we're not like gay. Okay, so then we get the pantheon of words in between. Cool. When I was growing up, bisexual meant men and women.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I discounted that word early on because that's what that meant at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, today that word has kind of the definition and use of that word has morphed a little bit, but I still, because of that residual definition, if someone tells me I'm bisexual, I'm like, okay, that's fine. I can identify close enough with that. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But with that part of it, because I had dated a woman and she outed me on Facebook
Oh.
against my consent.
Mm.
She put us in a relationship. And on a break from work, I'm like texting and trying to call my parents about like 10-minute break at work to try and tell them before the family phone
Oh
tree starts
no.
blowing them up and like,
Oh.
and so I'm just like, hey, I'm currently dating a woman, but this is not like, I need more time to like talk to you about this, just so you're not surprised. I want to be the one to tell you.
Oh.
And so that kind of my dad and my stepmom were like, sat me down. This was like at family Thanksgiving before we went to the bigger family event. And they were like, do we need to update the words that we use when describing your future partner? Because they had been using husband and boyfriend. And so they're like, would you like us to update that to spouse, or whatever? So that they were trying to pull for that information. I'm like, I can't give that to you right now because that was at the beginning of my gender social transition where I was still kind of figuring that out, where like, I need to
Mm.
figure out who I am first before
Mm-hmm.
I can find a definition for sexuality.
Mm.
But this whole time, I was having trouble when I was dating because I would need that really strong emotional connection to feel anything. Like this whole idea of people just looking at each other across a smoky, crowded bar and making eyes and just knowing that means it's go time. We're gonna go, we're gonna, we're gonna
Yeah.
make out and then maybe go somewhere else and have sex or whatever. Like I never had that experience, so I'm just like, okay, fine, fine, but that like I did need that strong connection. So I did kind of come out more as like pansexual, or I use queer more than I use anything else because
Mm.
there's so many words and I don't know, it's nuanced, it changes, so I
Mm.
slap queer on there because it's like it works for everything.
Yeah.
But the last year or two, I've kind of come to realize that the way that I'm experiencing dating and sexuality and the way that I value friendships, my friendships are really deep.
Mm.
um, there is a book, I think it's by Angela Chen, and it's about asexuality. My therapist was like, hey, I'm reading this. Maybe you want to read this. Which, if your
And
therapist is saying, hey, you should probably read this book, that's probably an indication of a theme that they've picked up.
yeah.
And then I kind of realized from then that I was on the asexual spectrum
Mm-hmm.
because I've never in my life walked down the street or been at the grocery store or been in class or anything and just looked at a person and was like, I want to have sex with you right now.
Mm.
It's never occurred in my entire life. And understanding that that is a bit unique, that most people actually do go like, so when I was joking with people like, oh, I'd climb him like a tree, I meant more like I would love to have coffee with him and maybe we can flirt and maybe kiss a little bit. Like it was not like the same quote unquote climb him like a tree that everyone else was talking about. And which
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe like, I don't know, is he nice? Like that, like was so stuck on like the person's personality and like if
Yeah.
we were compatible, and understanding that like, oh, wait a second, demisexual is, I need that strong emotional bond. I need to know who you
Mm.
are as a person before I can unlock that door into sexuality. Like once that's open, good to go. Like,
Mhm.
but if that's not there, I can easily go for months at a time without dating, not having any issues. There's, if I meet somebody and if I don't have that connection, I'm not like confused, like, oh, my body is saying I want to have sex with them, but they're actually a really shitty person. Like, I never have that problem because if they're a shitty person, I'm not attracted to them. And
Mm.
there would be under no circumstances that I would engage in intercourse with them. So it's like,
Mm.
good. But
Yeah.
recognizing that that framework and that perspective is just so different than how my friends were experiencing sex, where,
Mm.
because again, this came back to this whole, man, I'm really shitty at sex. I'm really shitty at getting into relationships. Like, I can't quite, like, this idea of one night stands. I'm like, I think I'm good. I think
Mm.
I'll pop on a movie, like I
Yeah.
don't, like I don't, like it doesn't bring me a release. It doesn't like give me any sort of comfort, or I'm not thinking of the word, but you know what I mean? Like it doesn't give me satisfaction, I would
Mm.
say.
Yeah.
Whereas some people are like, I need to go and I need to have the sexual release right now in order to be satisfied to go on and do whatever else I need to be doing. Like that's
Mm.
not part of the equation for me. And it's been really awesome to see that the idea, like asexuality has really kind of come into the conversation the last year or two, and
Mm.
also demisexual. And I love that we're having that conversation. It's the same, it feels very similar to me as non-binary. And it's not
Mhm.
just transgender, but also like, hey, there are all of these other experiences that people are carrying around with them. And wouldn't it be cool to know what that's like for them and to be able to support them in whatever they're doing. So,
Mm.
my friends don't necessarily ask me who I'm dating and what I've been up to and like all, sexual escapades because they know they're not going to really be getting that from me.
Mm.
Um, I have these like wistful ideas of, oh, maybe someday. I'm like, no, I don't really want to do that.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, okay. Anyway, I'm going to go back to reading a book. Like,
Yeah.
there's like not that sort of drive there, and bringing that sort of honesty and vulnerability into dating has been interesting as well because it feels very. It's like another round of, hey, what does non-binary mean? Like, how are you positioned in this relationship with me? Because now I don't have a rule book for how you're supposed to act and how I'm supposed to act. And there are
Mm.
those rule books for straight relationships, for gay relationships, for like lesbian relationships. So there seems to be these sorts of blueprints. And then I feel like whenever I'm in a relationship, it's like, so we're building the blueprint together.
Yeah.
There is no out of the box, prefabricated home situation happening. And that
Mm.
has felt true for demisexuality and asexuality. Be like, yes, I, can be interested in sex if I have an emotional bond with you. So we have to focus on the emotional bond first, and then we can get to that. It's not that that's never available to me. It's just maybe behind a series of locked doors.
Mm.
And that takes a certain quality of partner. That takes a certain person to be willing to go through all of like that sort of with you to get to the place where then you feel comfortable
Mm.
and engaging in that relationship. And just like some folks are like, that seems like too much work for me. I want something that's super easy and I know what to expect. Well, I wasn't dating those people when I was just non-binary and queer, and definitely not dating those people now as an
Yeah.
agender, asexual spectrum. I say demi-ace to be like, yeah, it's really is related to that
Mm.
emotional aspect. But yeah, so that's still a kind of a newer word for me. So I'm
Mm.
still
Mhm.
exploring and having learning opportunities. I feel like every time in a relationship, when I get out of it, I like have a debrief of like, okay, so some things happened that I'm not pleased with. I do not wish to repeat. And there are some things that I've now learned about myself so that the next time I can set expectations better and be clearer and honest about what I need, what I'm
Hmm.
willing to accept and what I'm not willing to accept. So
Well, that
I would
sounds
recommend
really healthy, actually, and something that, most people would benefit from doing, you know.
yes, again, this is not just a demi thing. This is not just a non-binary thing. Please
Yeah.
take whatever resonates for you. I think that this should be every relationship should kind of start from this. Like, this is a unique relationship between two unique individuals. And so this
Yeah.
is not going to look like anything else in particular. But
Hmm.
it's also your responsibility for what you're bringing to the relationship to say, these are my expectations,
Hmm.
this is what I'm clear on. And if there's something like, I'm not sure, but let's have that conversation. Like that sort of open
Yeah.
communication, I feel
So
is more
important.
present in queer
Yeah.
relationships.
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah, but it could always be more. I don't think that we could
Hmm.
ever have too much
True.
communication, especially when
Absolutely.
it's clear, honest communication. I should clarify, not
Yeah.
just da 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 da.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Because we make so many assumptions, don't we? Yeah.
Mhm.
So the word queer, what do you like about that? I like it myself. So what do you like about it?
um, I think it's so interesting because for me, I love it so much. And I also understand many people do not love it at all.
Mm,
And I like it because it's so inclusive that it's
hmm.
not focused on the differences. Like, we don't have to stratify out and be like, okay, I'm like you, but I'm not like you in this way. And I'm not like you in this way. Not like, like all these sorts of difference focuses, which, labels can be super helpful for self development. But I also feel like if you get too bogged down in the labels, that can be very restrictive and limiting. And the
Hmm.
word queer just feels like the only kind of parameter for queer is like just not conventional,
Mm,
not normative. So I think that there can be queer styles of relationships that have straight cisgender people in them. Maybe the other people in them are queer or on the queer spectrum.
hmm.
They could be like polyamory. I
Hmm.
think it's a queer type of relationship because it's non-normative, it's non-conventional.
Hmm.
Not, and that doesn't have any sort of values attached to it of like, this is the right way or this is the wrong way to have a relationship, or this is,
Mm,
it's just
different.
honestly like unexpected, but like maybe not the first thing that you think of. But I think that that's beautiful because then it can be anything that you want it to be. um,
Mm,
and that everyone is welcome in it. And I think that's what's important for me, so
hmm.
that even if you haven't found any other particular label that fits you, queer is so all encompassing that everyone is welcome in it, really. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, if you are sort of ish bi gender, but you're not sure, like aromantic, like anything like that, where, you might feel like there's not enough connection for you because maybe you can't find similar to people to you with the similar experience, at least with the queer aspect, then you just know that you can be with people who are having a different experience than compulsory cis heteronormative, expectations. And I think that's great.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like it just opens the space up, doesn't it? For like, okay,
Hmm.
this is going to be different. This is not going to be normative, in any way. And this is all about exploration and discovery. And it feels really expansive, actually. And I think a lot of us are not even all that in tune with our needs and wants because of all the assumptions that are made and all the things that society puts on us. Like, if you're a woman, you should act like this and you would, we're expected to do these things and give these things and basically not ask for anything, all that. Anyway, let's not get into that. I'll get on my high horse.
Right, right,
But
right.
all the things that are assumed, like a lot of assumptions made. So yeah, I like the word queer as well because it just opens to possibilities. It's just so open. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think possibilities is the word. It's
Yeah.
the double underlined and highlighted because
Yeah.
I feel like every queer person can think of a time in their life where they were not measuring up to some preconceived expectation, some out of
Hmm.
some identity that they were handed, and just the
Yeah.
idea that they're not wrong, they're not wrong for not fitting into whatever was given to them, that they're just something else, and that something else that they are is
Mm-hmm.
perfect and amazing and awesome.
Yeah.
And that sometimes it takes a bit to find that, but that, it's out there, and
Mm-hmm.
possibilities is infinite, right? So the
Mm.
way that you're doing it doesn't have to be the way that anyone, like, two lesbians are never going to be the same. They're
Mm.
just two different people. The fact
Yeah.
that, they love, women and women aligned people, awesome. But that, like, the idea that, our community is not a monolith. So I feel like
Mm-hmm.
it's the opposite of whatever
Mm.
we could even be as a monolith. Like, I can't even imagine from the queer community, like, trying to, like, shove us all into, like, one box. But it's just never gonna happen. It's just
No,
not, it's not
it
gonna
is
happen.
not. No. What do we talk about next? Your activism, perhaps?
Hmm. I think it's so funny about my activism because my activism feels like part of my transition.
Oh,
And it's a very unique way to transition, maybe.
right.
Everyone's initial thought is not, let me go take on the government while I'm
Yeah.
also trying to sort myself out. So, to give everyone else kind of a rundown, I'm what I call a solo advocate. So, I'm not necessarily working on behalf of anyone in particular
Mm-hmm.
other than myself. And then I just kind of show up in a variety of coalitions and partners and other folks doing amazing things and
Mm-hmm.
see how I can lend my skills and services. So, I just kind of like a whack-a-mole of equality advocacy. And I just pop in there and, like, hey, what do you need? Cool, I'll do that. And then on to the next thing.
Nice.
But more specifically, kind of where it started with the advocacy. So I work mostly on the state level. So since I'm from the US, you've got the federal level laws and then you have state level laws. And one of the challenges of being the United States of America is that as a queer person, when I cross a state line, I can still use the same dollars in my account, but my rights as a person can change drastically.
Wow, that's
Um,
crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
and I don't know that people really see and understand it that way because there's such a collective identity for
Mm-hmm.
America. And just understanding, like, okay, well, where I live, I want to be safe. And what do I need to do to make, like, my state at least inclusive? And then maybe the dominoes will fall and other states will follow suit. And then if enough states follow suit, we can get it on the federal level. And then it doesn't matter where I go, if I go visit family, then I'm safe. So there is kind of that aspect happening. So I live in Illinois, which is, I think, either it's like 2/3 of the population of Illinois, maybe even up to 3/4, live in the Chicagoland area. So the city of Chicago and then the surrounding suburbs.
Mm.
So I think land wise, that is maybe a sixth of the state. So it is a very, like, kind of like, in terms of where I live and then the types of folks who would naturally gravitate towards a city. That's why our state is quote unquote blue. It's why it's fairly democratic because of those sorts of demographics. We're kind of like the California of the Midwest in
Mm-hmm.
terms of equality initiatives that are happening and rights. So I'm surrounded by a lot of states that, like, again, if I go into Wisconsin or into Iowa or into, like, Kentucky, my rights change as a human being. And
Mm.
that's not great because I like to travel and I like to be able to go
Yeah.
where I want to go. And I don't want to be stuck where I'm living because that's the only place that's safe. So
Mm-hmm.
in Illinois, there's been a push lately the last couple of years, and then I kind of came in on that wave of a lot of pro equality legislation. For instance, like the X marker on state IDs, we did pass that initiative, but it is a little bit stuck in bureaucracy where the next time they update their system is when
Mm-hmm.
we'll get that. So that's a law that's already on the books, but it's not actually implementable right now because what I learned in this process is that our state IDs have our gender coded into them. It's a binary
Mm.
system. So they can't
Ah.
just slot in an X marker because that's a third option, and the system itself can't do. It's not just the X box in this, in, like, in when it says, like, sex or whatever. So the
Mm.
gender marker. So although, my friends who want an M or an F updated, they can go and they can do that right now. They don't even need a doctor's note anymore through legislation that we've done. But for me, I have to wait until the bureaucracy catches up and they update the system. So that's probably going to be
Mm-hmm.
another, we passed that 2 years ago, and that's probably going to be another 2 years until that's implemented. So, but
Wow.
items like that were very important to me. Like, I want my ID to state who I am as a person. I want it to be accurate, not just for safety, but just for just validation of like who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked on that, and we're getting there, but it's not fully realized yet. But so the first couple of things that I was doing, I was just like, this, I am not in these systems. There is no space for me here. So what
Mm-hmm.
are we going to do to make space for me? And that's kind of where the advocacy started, was just to let people know, hey, there are people in this state that are not being caught by the system. We're not in bucket A or bucket B. We're actually outside of it. So we need to update, whether it's paperwork, whether it's verbiage in law, or services provided. Like, there are some homeless shelters that are gender specific.
Ah,
So then where would I go?
yeah.
So there's, things like that where, and whether or not it's my personal experience, it's people in my community's experience. So at first it was a little bit self-serving. Like, I want my ID to reflect who I am. So I'm going to make noise so that I can get my ID.
Mm.
And now it's more, okay, there are people in the queer community and the LGBTQ community here that are not being served well by our government. They're
Mm.
they're being left out. So what can we do to bring them into this kind of idea of inclusive government? So that's what kind of where I've gotten to now. And because Illinois has done a really good job of getting these laws, like the bills are going through the state houses, they're getting, approved and then signed by the governor, who's also Democrat. So like this whole system is in place. And luckily it's stacked in what I would say my favor in terms of open people. It's not necessarily easy.
Mm.
We just did an updated sex education bill that was passed, and some of the discussion in the state house when they were talking about this bill was just, it blew my mind. The things that people were talking about, like worrying that teaching kids about queer people and queer identities would make them queer.
Mm.
And it's like, no, this is for the queer kids who are queer kids, and they need to see themselves in their curriculum and to know how to live a healthy life and have healthy relationships. And so, like, the sex ed bill is inclusive, but they've always got the naysayers. But so it's just been interesting because, again, even though there's so many things stacked in our favor, there's still a lot of naysayers and people who are diminishing that work and saying it's not needed when it is so
Mm.
needed.
Mm.
The fact that kids in America are more likely to, if they even do have sex education, if they even have it, I would say the majority of the time it is abstinence only. I had abstinence only. So I know
Oh, good grief.
I will let you know, I didn't even get the banana or the cucumber with the condom talk. We didn't even get that. We did not get that at all. We got
Wow.
pictures. We got a little card that we had to sign saying that we were going to abstain from sex until marriage, which lol, until 2015, I wouldn't even have been able to marry necessarily a
Oh my
partner of mine.
goodness.
Um,
Oh,
and we got lots of very graphic pictures of STDs.
wow.
That's what we got. That was my sex education. Never mind healthy relationships, never mind different family systems, never mind
Mm.
LGBTQ. Like, there was so much missing. So again, this update was very needed, and it just got signed into law.
Yay.
However, it's not mandated.
Mm.
So it's the curriculum is there, and there are parameters if you do have sex education, but for public schools, it's not mandated.
Mhm.
Originally, the mandate was in there, but they took it out in order to try and get the votes that they needed for it to pass, which for me as an advocate was very
Mm.
frustrating because I know how
Mm.
important it is. And I
Yeah.
want kids to be able to get the education they deserve, to
Mhm.
be able to be healthy, happy, and just good citizens in the world. It
Mm.
serves no one to like let loose a bunch of kids who don't know about condoms, who don't know about prophylactic HIV medication that you can be taking if you're engaging in anal sex, the fact that anal sex is sex, the fact that oral sex is sex, like all of these, like all of these things that I just really, they see it on the internet. It's not that they don't know about it, but I want them to have the framework to oh my gosh, know about consent.
Oh, yes.
Just that alone. And so again, when I'm in this advocacy stuff, it can be very frustrating because I see it. I'm like, this is so clearly needed. And then trying to convince people, and some folks are not with it. So advocacy wise, that's kind of where I have gotten to. I don't know that many queer people that go headfirst into, I'm going to learn about state legislature, and I'm going to go in there and I'm going to like call up my state reps, and I'm going to like send them emails, and I'm going to connect with them and say, this is what we need. Like, this is what I need you to champion on. And these laws that you need to pass, like that's not a common thing, I don't think. But to me, it's easy because it's just like communicating my needs and my community's needs. Hey, we need this. This is not going well for us right now. This is not okay. This is not freedom. This is not a way that a person can live a dignified life. And we all deserve to have dignity in life. We deserve, pursuit of happiness is a phrase in America that feels like there are so many asterisks after it that you have to kind of remind people that, like, hey, some of these super basic systems need to be there, because that's a huge part of that. It's not just capitalism. It's not just entrepreneurship. It's not just going and making tons of money and having a 20-foot yacht. Like, that's not not the only way that this is showing up. So I think it's also been interesting as an agender person and a person working in pro-equality legislation, where even in those rooms, I'm usually the minority in terms of my gender experience. I am white, so I'm not a minority in that sense, and I do carry a lot of privilege with my whiteness. But it's just been interesting to even in some of those spaces, how resistant they are to even putting their pronouns in their name cards, or explaining to them why having their pronouns in their social media bio or their email signature is so important. And when it's another LGBTQ person, it's like, why are we doing this? Why is it you? I need you. Like, you, yeah, I'm busy trying to wrangle some of these other people who, are having way more rough time. You should know, as another queer person, that like this is basic. It's not that hard. I don't get it. So, but I still go in those rooms, and I still make noise, and I still ask for the pronouns, and I say mine, in the hopes that someone else will understand that means that they also need to be sharing theirs. So there's really not much else I can do but like live my life maybe as an example, and just show up as I am, and be like, all right, you don't have a space for me? Well, deal with it, because I'm here and I am taking up space. So your move. Like, it kind of feels like a chess game. It's just like, yeah, I'm standing right here. I'm right in front of you. So I do exist. And how are you going to accommodate me? With love. With love. I'm not like
ideally
just going in there like ready to fight people, but I am a little bit ready to fight at all times, just because, everyone deserves to be seen and heard and valued. And just like I would advocate for others, I have to advocate for myself. And sometimes you have to be a little strong with that.
Totally. But, yeah, absolutely. Wow. Well, good for you. Let's hope more people join you in that, especially more queer people.
I hope that work becomes irrelevant. Like, I hope at a certain point there's nothing else for me to do. So until that happens, I'll probably still be doing it in some way, in some shape or form.
Totally.
We'll see.
Yeah. Is there anything that we haven't talked about yet that you would like to say or add?
I guess kind of another tangential piece with advocacy has kind of also been sharing my story, especially how my parents dealt with or didn't deal with well,
right?
Like my coming out and all of the gender stuff, because I think that it is like a microcosm of the world. Because again, anytime I'm stepping into a room with someone who is expecting man box, woman box, and then I roll in there and I have no boundary, there's no box, there's no box to be had for me, that people are looking for a way to assimilate that into their life and the way that they think about things. So I did create a program. It's mainly for parents who are kind of dealing, like, essentially the mirror of my story. Like the resource I wish my parents had when I
Mm.
came out, about
Yeah.
how do I navigate this? Because yeah, especially 2015, there was very little. It's gotten a lot better. There's a lot of amazing people on social media doing amazing things. There's lots of great books that are finally being put out. But this program was essentially, hey, like, how can you as a parent walk through your own gender journey to be able to connect with your gender expansive child? And when I say child, I just mean their kid, not necessarily that this person is below the age of 18 or below the age of majority. That's going to work with pretty much anybody. It just was kind of the reflection of my story and kind of how well my dad did and some of the challenges that my mom faced, that like
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of the, hey, like this is what's going to happen if you kind of buckle down and continue, you know, resisting this change, and this is how you can
Mm.
repair the relationship that you feel like you've lost with your child, because it's more of
Mm-hmm.
the, hey, like, I don't have a daughter anymore, I don't have a son anymore, I have this, like, this child is who I have, and so how am I going to rebuild that so that I can continue to have that loving relationship with them? So
Mm-hmm.
the program
Mm-hmm.
is Gender Mindset Reset, and I am also turning it into a book because just my
Nice.
mom was so cute. She wrote down some keywords when I came out to her and was talking to her, because I actually came out to her in conjunction with letting her know that I was getting top surgery. So it's just like, oh, hey, P.S. in 30 days, I'm going to go undergo a major medical procedure because I'm non-binary anyway. Like, are you going to be able to help me with recovery? It was a bit of a blitz, but so she was writing down like keywords so that she could go to the library and look up books, because her first
Oh.
instinct was, I don't know what this is. Where's the encyclopedia? I need to learn about this. And
Oh.
so just
Yeah.
knowing that there are so many loving parents out there who feel the same way, and that feel maybe that a book is a bit more tangible than like a
Mm-hmm.
program.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of what I've been working on. That is, again, just kind of another
Mm-hmm.
offshoot of my transition, my experience, and then also my advocacy. Like, it does kind of all pull together
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
there's always a need. And I think being the age that I am is really cool. So I'm 31, and I feel like I sit in between like the Gen Zs coming up, just super queer, just super open and emotional and just with it and very connected with themselves and aware of the distance between them and the systems
Mm.
that are around them. Like, they feel very aware. And then like the parents that might be 10, 15 plus years older than me, and like that's my experience of the people that I grew up with. So like I understand the way that they're thinking and feeling, and then also I understand my generation. So it just feels like I'm a really good bridge of,
Mm.
what is possible in your relationship, how can you rebuild and repair and move forward with
Mm.
your child that is now living their authentic self. Like, how do you assimilate that into your life and your
Mm-hmm.
story instead of rejecting it or pretending that it doesn't exist, hoping that it goes away because it's just a phase,
Mm.
all of these sorts of things. So it's been really cool because people slightly older than me feel very comfortable talking to me about gender and experience. And I feel like there's a weight of like validity of what I'm saying. They're like, oh, you've experienced it. You have a job, you went to college, like, you're doing okay. This is
Mm.
mythology that I don't know, that maybe trans people just like poof up in the air after a certain age. I'm not really sure. Like,
Yeah.
do we just disappear? And I'm like, I don't think that's true. But just kind of realizing that I'm getting into the elder space
Yeah.
for specifically gender wise, just because it hasn't been as visible. Like, this is
Mm.
kind of the first time it's really becoming visible. So it's
Yeah.
interesting to be like, I've experienced enough where I kind of sit in this elder position that is respected by people who don't understand gender and who know that I can help
Mm-hmm.
teach them, or at least kind of give them some pointers on where to start and like where how to engage with themselves.
Mm.
And then also speaking with younger folks and being like, oh my gosh, how is it? How is your life? Like, and knowing that, like, oh, yeah. So even though I am agender or I'm non-binary or I'm any of these things, that like there is a life for me, and
Mm-hmm.
5 years,
Yeah.
10 years, 15 years. And that's super cool. So that's kind of been my little passion project, was the creating the resource I wish my parents had.
That's so
So the
good.
fact that
So
that's
needed.
yeah, it is, and I'm so happy to know that there are other people doing similar work. And
Hmm.
I say the more the merrier. Let's go.
Totally.
Like all the perspectives. I think that because just like my perspective is unique, whoever might be
Yeah.
looking for information, maybe they won't necessarily vibe with how I present it, but somebody else's experience,
Totally.
or methodology works better for them.
Yep.
And again, I think great, awesome. Like do what you need to do in the way you need to do it to improve your relationships,
Mm.
retain some of that intimacy and that family connection, because not every queer person needs to have the tragic backstory of being ejected from their family. They
Hmm.
don't need to be shunned. That is
Yeah.
a whole piece that we can fix as a community and as a society. That
Hmm.
doesn't need to be the given, and that shouldn't be the expectation for when kids come out. Because kids are still coming out thinking, if I say this, I might get kicked out. That might be the end of it for me, regardless of age. Even it's like, oh, if I tell my parent this, then
Hmm.
I won't be invited to family Christmas anymore. And
Hmm.
when you're 30 or 40 years old, like, what? Like,
Yeah.
it's just like, it's like,
Yeah.
what do you mean that now I'm kicked out of the family? And what does that, what does that even mean? So
Yeah.
I want to try and fix that wound before it gets bigger, because there's such it's such an unnecessary thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. You just used a term that I hadn't heard before, but I really like. You said gender expansive. I love that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because for me, I don't think that trans people own, or even queer people own, gender nonconformity.
Hmm.
And so when I say gender expansive, it's just like beyond the expectations maybe that your parents gave to you, and that you're maybe subconsciously giving to your child. So with this idea
Mm.
that gender expansive is just, it's anybody and everybody. So for
Mm.
me, it's that vein of gold of gender nonconformity.
Hmm.
It's anything outside of the expectation, however that's presenting. So I love gender expansive. I think that is because gender nonconformity for me, it's like, that we're still tied to what should and shouldn't be, and I don't
Hmm. Hmm.
necessarily like that,
Yeah.
because it's like, okay, a cisgender straight person can be gender nonconforming. That doesn't say anything additional
Mm.
about a queer identity, or even gender expansive. It's just like, do we need the boxes anymore?
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
don't think we do. I don't think we ever need the boxes. I would also like to remind people that these boxes are fairly new boxes. They really
Hmm.
only developed their current gender restrictions, at least in the West here, like in America, and probably other westernized countries, probably 1930s,
Hmm.
1940s.
Hmm.
So, this whole, it's always been this way, not true. So we need to, we're in the ebb and the flow, and let's get back into the, we don't need the boxes at all. That would be my preference. As an
Awesome.
agender person, that's a little bit selfish too. Be like, please just get rid of the boxes so I don't have to worry about them, because I normally don't worry about them for myself. So like, let's everybody just kick the boxes out, thank them
Yeah.
for their work, I guess. Just like, like, thank you, but no thank you. We would not like any more.
uh,
Consciously
yeah.
recycle them, and then let's
Yeah.
move on.
Hold the boxes. Do they spark joy? If not, kick them out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, there's really, they can move on to their next life as,
Yeah.
tree derivatives, or they can go be in the soil and help. I don't know. They just do not need to be here.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Well, there's something to look forward to, hey?
Please.
Indeed. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, and just going on the journey here. I feel like
Nice.
I've gone through a memory box and like come out and like
Yeah.
shown little bits of the memory box, which is always fun to share.
You can find out more details on the website at 50shadesofgender.com/M, which is EMME, where you can also read the transcript. And you can find Emme on their website, emmepdw.com, which is EMME PDW, and on social at Emme PDW. Links are on the episode page. Thank you for listening to the 50 Shades of Gender podcast. You can find us online at 50shadesofgender.com, on social media, and on YouTube. Again, if you'd like to support us, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/50 Shades of Gender or buy us a coffee. Links are on the website. We hope you will listen again. Until then, stay curious and open-minded. Brilliant. Do you have any questions before we start?
Cursing, I guess.
Oh, it's all good. It is
okay,
all good.
Not
Anything.
that like I'm gonna let it rip all the time, but like just
Totally.
in case if there's
No,
a
it's all good.
juicy,
Yes.
shit or fuck, like I just want to know if I should like
bring it
censor
in.
myself.
Let's just have it. Yeah, let's
All right, perfect.
let it all be there.
That's about where I thought we were, but always good to check.
Yeah, no, that's true. That is true. Yeah, because I tend to swear. Like I love swearing. Really, it's just great. I mean, there's a time and place for it, obviously. I don't just go around swearing all the time just for the sake of it. Right. But I do find like it helps me express myself passionately at times. So
sometimes they are just the perfect words. It's not that you don't have other ones. They're just that's the one that you wanted to use.
Exactly, and there is no substitute. So yeah.